Starting the fifth Perek of Masechta Yoma, and the Mishnah here will continue with the Aveda of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Specifically, we're in the middle of the Aveda of the Ketores. In previous Mishnah, we spoke about the fact that the Kohen had to shovel the coals and the fire from the Mizbeach in order to be used for the Ketores. Now, the Mishnah continues from where he gets the actual Ketores that's going to be placed on this fire, inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Haitziu loyes hakaf, they brought him out a ladle. Vesamachta, and also a shovel, which the Gemara will say what this machta is. This is the machta that has the ketores inside of it. Chofan meloy chofnov. So now he does chafina, which is taking a handful, 2 handfuls of the ketores in his hands. V'noisen l'toich hakaf, and he places it into the ladle. Hagadol if you godloi, a kohen gadol that has a large hand, so he has a lot of ketores in his 2 hands. V'akotn if you kotnoi. And a kohen that has small hands will have a small amount of ketores. This was the measurement. The Gemara is going to explain why the Mishnah adds these words. Then he takes the machta, which has the coals of the, now when it says here machta, it's referring to the machta of the coals from the Mizbeach. So he takes that machta with the fire in his right hand, vesakaf, and the ladle that now has the ketores in it, biyaminoi. He takes that in his left hand. So the Gemara first clarifies the first machta that it said in the Mishnah, that they brought him out of machta. What is this all about? So the Gemara, machta, he's saying over here that they bring him out a pan or a shovel. So what does this mean? Hatanale, didn't we already say before? Not samachta, that he took the shovel and he went up to the top of the mizbeach and he shoveled there from the fire, from the coals, and he came down. So he already had that shovel from before. Why does it say here that they bring him a shovel? So the Gemara explains it's 2 different shovels. Hasa machta de gecholim. There it's the shovel to get the coals from the mizbeach. V'hacha machta de ketores. Here there's a shovel that is filled with the ketores that they bring to him. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, Haitziu loi, the Bach says here, Haitziu loi esakaf reikon. They brought him an empty ladle from the chamber where they had all these kalim. So they brought him a ladle, milishkas kalim, and then umachta gedusha shel ketores, and then a shovel overfilled with ketores. Milishkas beis aftinis, from the chamber called beis aftinis, where the ketores was prepared and ground. So therefore this is a different machta. The machta of the ketores, and then there's the machta of the coals from the mizbeach. Then it said in the Mishnah, Chofan meloy chofna v'noisen l'toich hakaf. He takes 2 handfuls and he puts it into the ladle. Kaf hagadol, big ladle. Sorry, again. Let's read that again. V'noisen l'toich hakaf, hagadol l'fi godloi. A kohen with large hands has a larger amount. A kohen with a smaller amount has a smaller amount. This was the measure. So here the Gemara will explain what's the source of the fact that we use a ladle. Why do I need a ladle to hold the ketores, to bring it inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim? If you look in the Torah, what does it say? That he should take meloy chofnov, a full 2 handfuls of the ketores, and he should bring it into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So he should bring it in his hands. Why is he using a ladle? So the Gemara answers, Mishum deloy efsher. There's no other way. How could he bring it in? He has to carry the ketores, and he also has to carry the shovel with the coals, with the fire. How is he going to bring both of them in together? And the Gemara goes through it. Hey, Chinavid, what should he do? So since he has to carry these 2 things, so he's using 2 hands to hold the ketores. So now you're going to say that he should go in twice. Na'ayil, v'hoda na'ayil. He should go in 1 time to bring the ketores, and then he should go in again, come back and take the shovel with the fire, the coals to go in. You can't do that. Havo achas amarachmana. It says in the Torah to come 1 time. Vehevi mi beis lapareches. He comes in once. V'lo shtei avos. And not that he comes in and brings in twice. So that's not an option. Nishkele l'ketores b'choifnov. Now, another option. Does he take all the ketores in both of his hands, 2 handfuls, and then what we'll do is v'nachse l'machta Allah, and you'll put the pan of the coals on top of his hands, and then v'leil. That's how he should go in. Now, the Gemara is going to explain the problem with this, but let's stop here for a second. And Mefarshim say this is going to be pretty hard because the coals in the pan is boiling hot. How is he going to put it on top of his hands? So the answer that they say is, just like it said before in the Gemara regarding the handle of this pan, that according to the Yerushalmi, it had a leather cover on it in order to not to be able to hold it. It shouldn't get too hot. So according to what the Gemara is suggesting now, it had some leather, some kind of a leather to insulate it, that it shouldn't be too hot. That's how it would have to be done. But the Gemara says it's not going to work. Why not? Because Kimati Hasam, when he gets inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Heichi Lavid, what is he going to do? How is he standing there and he has the coals in his hand? He has the Ketaitis in his hands and the pan on top of it. How is he going to take it off? Nishkele B'Shineh, he's going to take it off with his teeth. His hands, he can't move it, but so he's going to take it off with his teeth. V'nechse Lamachtan, he's going to take off the pan to put it on the floor. That's not the right way to do this. Hashta, lefnei melech basa v'dam ein kain. In front of a king of flesh and blood, you don't do this way with your teeth. Lefnei melech malchei hamlach hakadosh baruch hu alachas kama v'kama. In front of the Eibush to do it this way, most definitely it's not proper. So therefore, hilkach lo yefshe. So therefore, we see that having both of your hands occupied, holding the ketairis in it, so you have no way how to maneuver yourself to take care of that pan of the fire, so it's impossible. So if it's impossible, what do we do? Of dinon kida ashkecham b'nesiim. We do like what we find, what it says by the Nesiim, when the Nesiim brought their karbanis, last week's parsha. So what did it say? They brought a kaf achas meleya ketairis, one ladle filled with ketairis. So we see that ketairis is placed inside a ladle. And that's also how the Kayin brings it inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So he holds the ladle in his left hand and the fire with the shovel in his right hand. So now the Gemara will explain why is the fire in the right hand and the Ketairis in his left hand. It should be the reverse. Yitzive ba'ara v'giyura b'shmei shmaya. This is an expression the Gemara uses in a few places. It means Yitzive means a citizen. A citizen is put down on the ground, low down, and Giyura, a someone that's a foreigner, B'shmei Shmaya, he's elevated all the way up to the heavens. What's the Gemara saying? The Ketaitis is the main thing. So the Ketaitis should be in the right hand. The fire is just to create the smoke. So the fire, which is not the main point, it's just like the foreigner, that should be in the left hand. The Gemara answers, the reason is because Zu merube v'zu muetes. The fire, the coals are much more. You have to have, we learned before, different opinions. 4 kav, right, what was it? I think it was 3 or 4 kav of, 3 kav I think it was. 3 kav of the coals. So you have to have a lot of coals here. So it's more. V'zu muetes, it's heavier, exactly. V'zu muetes. And the amount of ketairis you have is much less. The 2 handfuls of a person is not 3 kav. So therefore it's much less. So that goes in the weaker hand, in the left hand. Then the Gemara says, even if you have so much ketairis that it's equal to the amount of coals, and that's in a case where the Kohen Gadol's hands are very large. Like a story with Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis that had extremely large hands, even then you still put the ketairis in the left hand. As Rashi says, because most times the ketairis is going to be less than the fire and it's not as heavy, so therefore it's in the left hand. According to some Girsis, it adds another point. It doesn't seem like Rashi's guide is this, but some add another point. Zuchama v'zutzeinenes. The fire, the coals are hot, so it's harder to maneuver, to balance. So you want to have a stronger hand, the right hand, and v'zu, the ketairis is cold, so therefore it's in the left hand. Now the Gemara explains what's the story with Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis. He had very large hands. Amru alav Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis. So they said about Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis, which was a Kohen Gadol. His mother's name was Kimchis. Shahaya chayfin arbas kavim b'mloi chofnav. He had such big hands that he was able to take 4 kavin in his 2 hands. V'aymer, and he said as follows. Kol anashim zeret zardu. All the women zeret zardu. The Gemara is going to explain in a second what this expression of zeret zardu means. V'zeret ima, the zeret of my mother, ala lagag, is all the way up on the roof, meaning it's stronger, higher than everyone else. So the Gemara explains now 2 versions what this means. Zeret zardu. Ikedamri, one version is ba'arsan. This refers to some kind of a cereal or some kind of a grits that they used to eat in the morning. And Rashi here says, K'd Rabbe bar Yonasan, the Amar Rabbe bar Yonasan, Amar Rabbi Chiel, arsan yafe l'chayla. That this grits or this cereal that they ate in the morning is good for a sick person. So Rashi says this refers to the women when they're pregnant and they get weak and they're not feeling so well, so they have this special dish of food that they ate to heal them, to give them kayach. So he says that all women eat this when they're pregnant, and my mother had a better quality and therefore I was born stronger. That's one pshat in Zeret Zarda, referring to this cereal that's prepared for the women that are pregnant. V'ikadamri, others say Zeret Zarda refers to B'shichva Zera. It refers to the Zera that he was born from. The Rabbi Avo asked the following question. So before we come to the question, Rashi explains that when it comes to the Zera that a child is created from, it's only a small part of the Zera that the child is born from. And what he was saying is that the chelik of the Zera that he was born from was from the best of the best. And therefore he was born very strong. And here the Gemara brings a source from this, what it says by David HaMelech. The Rabavo asked the question. Ksiv, the pasuk says, Vatazreini chayil ha-mulchama. Vatazreini means that you strengthen me, but it says Vatazreini, which also is Meloshin Zaira. Zaira in Hebrew means winnowing, when you separate the good from the bad. So it says Vatazreini chayil ha-mulchama. And then in another pasuk it says, Ksiv, Hama'azreini chayil ha-mulchama. So over here, or actually the others are geiris, that's the right girsa. Vatazreini chayil ha-mulchama, and here it says it with an aleph. Vatazreini, you have strengthened me. So once it says Vatazreini without an aleph, and once it says with an aleph. So what is the meaning? Amad David lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, Master of the universe, Zerisani, you have winnowed me, meaning the Zera that he was born from, the seed that he was born from, so the Eibusher chose the best of the best that he should be born from, and then V'zerastani, and then you have brought me to be strong, to make me to become swiftly and be strong. So the Eibusher first took the best of the Zera and then made him strong. That's how he became strong. So Rashi says that the word Zered is from the Lashon Chavilei Zrodim, when you have a bundle of grain. So the bundle of grain, so then you take the best of it to be able to eat from it. And therefore he's saying that he was born from the best of the Zera. Therefore he had such large hands. Now the Gemara says interesting about Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis and his brothers and his mother. Very interesting thing here. It's like the Gemara Amru Alav Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis. It was said about Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis that Pam Achas Sipit Varim, it was once, and Rashi says this was on Yom Kippur. That so he had a conversation in Maravi Echad B'Shuk, with an Arab that was in the marketplace. Obviously speaking to this on Yom Kippur, to this Arab. So the Mefarshim here bring from the Yerushalmi that this was some kind of, that wasn't Stam an Arab, but it was some a king or someone that he had to answer him. He had to have a conversation with him even on Yom Kippur because of the covet that he had to give him. So he had no choice. And v'notza tzinura mipiv al begodov. Some spittle went from this Arab's mouth onto his garments. And he becomes tameh, right? The spit of a guy that goes in your garment is like a tumah of a zav, and therefore he became tameh. So he couldn't continue doing the Aveda on Yom Kippur. V'nichnas Yishevav ech achiv v'shimish tachtav. Yishevav, his brother, went in to serve as a Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash instead of him. Others say that this story happened on Erev Yom Kippur. Okay, but either way, so his brother came and served as a Kohen Gadol. So his mother was zeicha to see two of her sons, Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shevav, serving as Kohanim Gedalim on the same day. V'shuv amru, and it happened again. All about Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis. They said again about Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis that Pa'amachas yatsa v'sipirim hegmain echad b'shuk, that once he went out in Yom Kippur and he had a conversation with a hegman, with a governor, with some kind of one of the leaders there of the Goyim in the marketplace. V'notzot tzinura mipiv al begodov, and some spittle went from his mouth onto his garments. Now what happened? Another one of his brothers, V'nichnas Yosef achiv B'shimish tachtav. His brother Yosef came and served in the Beis HaMikdash instead of him. And his mother was able to see two brothers serving as a Kohen Gadol on the same day. Tana Rabbanan and Abraisa, we learned even more than this. Shiva banim hayalala Kimchis. Kimchis had 7 sons. V'kulan shimshu b'kuna gedayla, and they all served in the Beis HaMikdash as Kohanim Gedalim. Amru la Chachamim. So the Chachamim said to her, Ma asisa shezachisa lekach. What did you do that you was eicha for such a thing that that your sons serve as a Kohanim Gedalim? Amar Alahem, she answered, Mi Yoma. In my entire life, loiro kairis beisi kalei sari. The roof of my house, or the beams in my house, never saw the curls of my hair. She always covered her hair properly. So the Mefarshim say this doesn't refer to the obligation of covering the hair al pi halacha, because then she wouldn't be zeichet to such a thing, but this is like she was mahadir even more, that even things that whatever would be even allowed to be shown, she still covered completely, she was mekayim the mitzvah with even more hidur. That's what it's referring to. But Amrullah, they said to her, Har ba'asukein. There are many others that did the same, v'loi hayilu, and it didn't help for them. So there must be some other schus that you have besides this. Okay, so some Mefarshim say that the Gemara is actually having charata from this, that it's saying that it can't be that this schus was mitzad tznius. It must have been a different schus. Others say that what the Gemara is trying to say is it was this schus of the tznius, but it was also something additional besides that. It's tznius plus something else, because others did this and it didn't help for them. The Rebbe brings this Indian in a Sikha, and the Rebbe says that it's not only the Indian of tznius, but it's b'chlal the Indian of Kabbalah soil, that she was mekayim mitzvah with such Kabbalah soil, even it's a difficult mitzvah to do, and it's the kayach of Kabbalah soil that she was zeichet to have her 7 sons go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and do the Aveda and the Yom Kippur. Tana Rabbana. Now the Gemara comes to another Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash. Here in the Mishnah we were speaking about this Aveda of the Ketayres, which is taking the handfuls to bring inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There's another Aveda which is similar, and we're going to learn them out from each other, which is the Aveda of Kmitze. When you take also a sort of a fistful from the Karban Mincha. So in the Braisa we learned Bekumtzai. It says in the pasuk, when you take the kaimitz, that you should take bekumtzai your kaimitz. What does this mean? Shulayase mide lekaimitz. You should not make a keli that has the measure of your kaimitz, and then you don't have to do the kaimitz with your hand anymore. You can just use this keli. You shouldn't do that. You have to actually do the kaimitz with your hand. So now that we see that that's the halacha by the kaimitz, the question is, what's with chafina? When you take the handfuls for the ketayres. Are you allowed to make a keli which has the measure of your handful? Do I compare it to the kaimitz or not? There the Torah says it has to be your hand. Here the Torah does not say b'chafnav, rather Ella, what does it say? Malay chafnav. Fill the amount of your handfuls. So maybe here, because it says Malay chafnav k'torah samim daka, loy, this is different. Here maybe you could make a keli that has that amount, and you don't have to actually have your handfuls. Or maybe Yalif Malay mikumtzai. Just like here it says Malay. So there's another pasuk by the Kaimetz where it also says Malay kumtzai. So maybe I compare these two words Malay to say that you cannot use a keli instead of your handfuls. It has to be done with your handfuls, just like by the Ketayres. So here the Gemara will try to bring that eye from our Mishnah. There were extra words in the Mishnah. Toshema, what did it say in the Mishnah? V'kach Haisa midasa. This is the measure. What do those extra words in the Mishnah mean? My love, don't you think it means Shimratza lasis midah? The Bach takes out the word acheres. Shimratza lasis midaisa. That if you want to make a keli that has this measure, this amount, you could. So it doesn't have to be done with your hands. So it says the Gemara loy. That's not the pshat on those words. Hachi ka'ama. This is what the Mishnah is saying. V'kach hayachayze v'chayfna lifnim. Just like the Kayan had to take a handful when he was outside in order to go inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so the same thing when he came inside, so he took a handful from the ladle again, took a handful out of the ladle to put it into the fire. So he did the same Aveda over again inside. And that's what the Mishnah meant when it says, V'kach hoisa midasa. This is how it was done again inside, which will be explained later in the Gemara. So that will be explained in the next daf exactly how this is done. Shamit mina, but the Gemara says, wait a minute, if that's how you're learning pshat in the Mishnah, so I see from here, chayfin, v'chayze v'chayfin, that you take the handful one time outside, and then when you come inside, again you take a handful out of the ladle to put into the fire. And as we'll see later in the Gemara, it's a machlokes about this. Some say that you don't have to take a handful again inside. So according to your interpretation, we have a raya from our Mishnah that you take a handful again inside. So the Gemara says, no, there's no raya. Dilma, we can say, when it says in the Mishnah, V'kach haysa midasa, it's not clear how to interpret it. So you can't bring a raya either way. Dilma, shemratzis lasas midaisa. Maybe the pshat of our Mishnah is that he could make a keli for the measure of the handful that he takes out. In other words, the Gemara is saying, the words V'kach haysa midasa in the Mishnah, we don't know how to touch it. You could either say it means that he does this chafina twice, outside and inside, or you could say it means that he makes a keli for it. So there's no raya from the Mishnah. Now the Gemara offers an alternative shot for what V'kach haysa midasa means. Inami, what it means is Shalay yachsar v'shalay yaiser. It means to say that he has to do exactly Meloi Chofnov, it has to be exactly the amount that fits into his handful. Not less, it shouldn't be a little bit empty, shouldn't be overflowing, it should be exactly the amount that fits into his hands. That's why the Mishnah is saying, V'kach chaysam midasa. Taner Rabbanan, coming back to the kaimitz, and then again, from the kaimitz we'll come back to chafina. These are two halachas that are sometimes compared to each other.
The thing that they put the hands of the teres in, that comes the kelim.
The ladle.
Yes.
It's placed afterwards in the ladle,
right,
correct.
Right.
But it has to, l'chatchila has to be done with the hands.
The second time, that becomes...
Like true. Okay, there'll be a machlokes about that, whether you have to do it over again, we'll see.
And how does he first scoop it up with his hand and then put it in the ladle?
Yes.
No, but how did he's all by himself, nobody's holding the ladle?
No, so there's another kind helping him there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another kind that holds the ladle and he scoops it up and puts it into the ladle. When he walks in, he has to do it himself.
Right.
Then, outside, he has other kind of helping him. Tana Rabbana, we learned in Abraisa, Malay Kumtza, you should have a full kaimetz. When you take from the mincha, so yachol mevayretz, I would think that there could be some that's sticking out from the fingers. Tamud leima bekumtzai has to be bekumtzai. Only what goes inside your fingers. Nothing should be sticking out from the sides. Now, if you have to have only what's inside, yachol afile berashi etzba'isa. I would think that it's enough just to take with the tip of your fingers. That it doesn't. In other words, there's two ways how to do the kaimitz. You can do the kaimitz just with the tip of your fingers, or you can bend over your entire hand, over your palm, over the palm of your hand, that you have that more space to hold inside the palm of your hand. So you don't do it with the tip of your fingers. It has to be done with a full kaimitz, the way people take a kaimitz, as the Gemara is soon going to say. Rashi says it later, that you actually go in sort of sideways. When a person wants to take something, you go in sideways, so then you're taking it fully into your palm, and then you close your hand, and then whatever stays inside, that's the kaimitz. Okay, tzad. How is this done? You cover over 3 of your fingers on the palm of your hand, the kaimitz, and that's how you take the kaimitz. So you have to have your full palm of your hand, not just the tip of your fingers. Now, ubemachvas ubemarcheshes, there's 2 of the minches that have to first be fried. It's fried in a regular pan or in a deep pan. So usually the kaimitz is done with flour. That's very easy. You just take it, flour into your hand, and then whatever stays inside, and the rest sort of falls off. But then there's a kaimitz that's done with the flour once it's already fried with oil. So now, when you have to take a kaimitz from, then it's broken into little pieces. When you have to take a kaimitz from that, so now it has to be only what's going to be inside those fingers. Nothing is allowed to stick out. So what do you do in order that it shouldn't stick out? So you have to rub it off with your thumb on one side, and with your pinky on the other side. In order, you have to rub it to make sure that it's exactly only what's inside. This is a difficult aved in the Beis HaMikdash, to make sure that the kaimitz is exact and nothing is sticking out. So the Gemara asks, Zuhi, this is a difficult aved of Sulai. There's no other aved that's difficult. But v'ha'ike melike, it says regarding melike as well, which is the way you shecht with your fingernail. That's also considered to be a difficult aveda. It says that clearly in the Gemara. And also v'ha'ike chafina, the chafina that's done inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. We're going to see about this. The Gemara is going to explain it on Daf Mem Tes. It was also very difficult how to do this, and that's also an aveda kasha. Ela zuhi me avedas kasha shebemikdash. The aveda of the kemitze, when you have it after it's fried and it's pieces, and you have to rub it off that it should be exact. That's one of the difficult avedas in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara continues here, and the Gemara has another few questions. The Gemara clarifies this aveda of the kaimitz, and then from there we're going to come back to the chafina, similar. Rabbi Yechanan says, Boy, Rabbi Shua ben Uzzah. Rabbi Shua ben Uzzah asked the following question: Bein habinayim shamulay kumtzei mahu, between the fingers of the kaimitz. What's going to be the halacha with that flour or whatever there is from the carbon mincha between your fingers? Is that part of the kaimitz or is it not part of the kaimitz? And the Gemara is going to explain exactly what it means with this question. So Amar Rav Papa explained, the gavoi, what's already inside of your fingers, sort of facing your palm, even though it's between the fingers, but it's further inside, loitu bayalach. That's not a question. The vadai kaimitzu, that's definitely part of the kaimitz. The beroi, what's between the fingers, but it's on the outside. It's sort of facing on the outside of your hand, the back of your hand. That also loiti bayalach. There's no question because it's facing outside. It's not part of the kaimitz. The vadai shirayim. That's definitely shirayim. What's the halach of the shirayim? By a carbon mincha, there's a kaimitz that you take off to burn in the mizbeach. All the shirayim, all the leftovers, all the rest is for the kainim to eat. So what's outside your fingers, even though it's in between, but it's facing completely outside, that's for sure the leftovers that the kainim have to eat. Ki tibayalach. What's my question? The beini. What's in between the fingers? It's not outside, it's not inside, it's between the fingers of the kaimitz. What's the halacha? Is that part of the kaimitz or not? Rav Yechanan said, Sahadar, Pashta, Rav Yeshua, Uzah. Rav Yeshua ben Uzah answered this question and he said, Beina binayim, suffik ninu. What's in between your fingers is a suffik. It's not clear if it belongs inside or outside, so therefore it's a suffik. Taisus points out, it's very interesting. The Gemara says, Hada Pashta, he answered it. He didn't really answer it. He basically says it's a suffix. So Taisus says, in the beginning he thought it's either or. Either it's part of the kaimitz or it's not. And then he answered, we don't know. It's a suffix, and therefore, now the question is, what do you do? The problem is, if it's part of the kaimitz, it has to be burnt on the mizbeach. If it's not part of the kaimitz, that's what's called shirayim, and that's what the kainim have to eat. It's not allowed to be burnt in the mizbeach. So what do you do with this that's in between the fingers? Hey chiyavid, what do you do? Rav Chanina says, makte kaimitz l'chudei. So first you burn the kaimitz on the mizbeach, what you know for sure is the kaimitz inside your hand. And then v'hadar ben abinayim. And then you burn separately from what's between the fingers. And there's a suffix, you burn that separately. And the Gemara explains why. Why do we have to burn it separately? And why do we burn what's in between the fingers only second? If you're going to say that you burn on the mizbech what's between the fingers, maybe that's not supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach. Maybe it's really the leftovers that are supposed to be eaten. And if so, what's the problem? If so, the shirayim, the leftovers that are supposed to be eaten by the kainim, is now missing. And what's the halacha if it's missing a little bit? The master said, shirayim shechosru ben kmitzel aktara, the shirayim of the mincha, the part of the mincha that's supposed to be eaten by the kainim, if there's anything that's lacking of it, you don't bring any more you can't anymore bring the k'tayris on the mizbeach. Rashi brings there from the Gemara in Menachos, where the Gemara learns it out from a pasuk. Min ha-mincha, that you have to bring the kaimitz from the mincha. It has to be from the full leftovers of the mincha. If anything of the shirayim was taken away, you can't burn it anymore on the mizbeach. So this in between the fingers, it might be part of the shirayim, so you can't first burn it. You have to leave it there. Okay, so it can't be first. So you burn it second. So first you burn the full ketayres, and then what's in between the fingers, which is a suffix, then you burn that. But the Gemara asks, this order is also not good. Ihachi, if so, that first you burn the kaimitz, and then you burn what's in between the fingers, which is a suffix. Hashtanami, now as well, you're going to have an issue. What's the issue? Ikri kan, why don't you apply over here this that it says that kol shemimenu leishim harehu beval saktiru. Once you have the kaimitz that was placed on the fire, the leftovers are not allowed to be burnt on the fire. Rashi over here also brings the pasuk. It says in Vayikra, "Leisaktiru mimenu ishal Hashem," that once you burnt already part of the carbon on the fire, the other part that's not supposed to be burnt, you're not allowed to put it on the fire. So if you burn the kaimitz first, how are you going to then put this other part, which is a suffix, on the fire? So the Gemara answers. Rav Yehuda said, "The maktelei mishum l'shum eitzim." When you burn this part of the kaimitz, which is a suffix, you burn it on the mizbeach not as a carbon. You burn it on the mizbeach as like firewood. It's allowed to be brought on the mizbeach as firewood. It's not allowed to be brought as a carbon, but it can serve like firewood. So therefore, for that you're allowed to bring it on the mizbeach. And the Gemara brings a source for this. Rabbi Eliezer, this is what Rabbi Eliezer said. The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Oimer, l'reyach nichayach. That pasuk that says leisaktiru mimenu yishal Hashem. So it says over there l'reyach nichayach, that if it's being brought as a carbon, iyatamayla. You're not allowed to bring it on the mizbeach once you already were makter what's supposed to be brought. So you're not allowed to bring the leftovers, something else that's not supposed to be brought on the mizbeach. You're not allowed to burn it on the mizbeach. Avalatamayla l'shum eitzim. If it's not being brought as a carbon, it's just being brought as wood on the mizbeach, that's allowed. Rashi here brings that Rabbi Eliezer said this regarding a situation where you have pieces of carbonis that were mixed with each other. and you're not sure if it's supposed to be brought in the Mizbeach or it's now Chatos and Oila got mixed up with each other. You don't know if it's supposed to be brought in the Mizbeach. So what do? You bring it on the Mizbeach, but you bring it as wood. Just these pieces of the karbanos can be serving as wood. So therefore it can be brought on the Mizbeach this way. The same thing over here, the Gemara applies regarding this kmitza. There's a suffix, so you'll burn it on the Mizbeach, and you won't burn it as part of the carbon, you burn it separately as if it's fire, wood for the fire. That's according to Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara says, okay, this is Rabbi Eliezer says you can do this. This works according to Rabbi Eliezer. But according to the Rabbanon, Ma'yikala Meimar. What do you say according to the Rabbanon? Rabbanon say you can't do this. If the Torah says you can't bring it onto the Mizbeach, it doesn't make a difference if you're bringing it as a carbon or you're bringing it as if it's wood. You're not allowed to bring it on the Mizbeach. So what do we do over here with this kaimetz and what's between the fingers, and we're not sure if it's a kaimetz or not, so what are we going to do with this? So the Gemara says, Omer Rav Mari. So Rav Mari says, here's the eitzah. The kamtzi shmeini, the kainim that do the kmitza have to be fat. They have to have fat fingers. So therefore there's nothing that's going to be in between their fingers. So therefore there's no issue. So the Gemara says, if so, hashtra dasas lahachi, if that's the conclusion, that the kainim that are doing it have fat fingers, so Rabbi Eliezer nami lechatchila, the kamtzi shmeini, even according to Rabbi Eliezer, in this case, we shouldn't rely on what Rabbi Eliezer said in the case where the fats of the karbanos got mixed with each other. Maybe only over there Rabbi Eliezer says that b'di'evet, they got mixed with each other, then you can bring it as firewood. But over here, by the kaimitz, you should use a kain that has fat fingers, and you won't have this issue. So this is b'negeh to the kaimitz. Now the Gemara comes and asks questions and some similar things b'negeh to the chafina, the handfuls that you use for the ketayres in Yom Kippur. And we have a siman here, bein abinayim, pashat, umachatz, upazav, v'chishev, v'chafinis chaveirei siman. So Boy Rav Papa asked the question regarding the chafina. Bein abinayim shemaloi chofnav mahu. So when a person is taking the handfuls of the ketayres and what's in between his fingers, so what's going to be the halacha here? In between the fingers regarding the chafina, is that part of it or not? So the Gemara says, "Mai kami bayale." Why is Rav Papa asking this question regarding the chafina? I gamar maloi mahasam. If he learns out maloi. This Gzeira Shava that we said before, that we compare the chafina to the kaimetz, so hainu hach. It's the same shayla that we asked before. And we said before that it's a suffix, so isn't it the same thing? Why? It's the exact same thing. Just like over there it says bekumtzai, and therefore in between the fingers are not good, so we're learning out malay, so why are we asking the question again? So the Gemara answers, Rav Papa hachi bayale. Rav Papa's question is as follows. Really, as Rashi explains, Rav Papa does not learn out the Gzeira Shava. We don't compare the chafina to the kemitza. But what's his question? Meloi chafna v'hevi be'inon. Do I say that the Torah says he should have the handfuls and bring it in? And if so, v'ha'ike. A person puts his hands into the ketayres and he has a handful. Even what comes between the fingers is considered to be part of the handfuls, and therefore you bring it in and it's good. Or oidilme, or maybe there's another. It says in the pasuk before, v'lokach v'hevi be'inon. You look at there at the full pasuk. So what does it say there? So the pasuk says that v'lokach mulay amachta, that he takes it, and then v'hevi. So as Rashi explains, what does v'lokach mean? It has to be an action that the person is doing. You're doing the chafina, and then there are certain things that get stuck between your fingers. That's not considered to be v'lokach. You didn't take that. That's something that got stuck between your fingers. So maybe because it says v'lokach, you have to be the one that's taking it, v'haleke, and therefore what's between the fingers is not part of that, so therefore it's not part of the chafina. Teiku, so we don't have an answer to this question. Amar Rav Papa said, so now that we come back to the kemitza, how is the kemitza done? And then we're going to come back to the chafina again. We keep on going back between the chafina and the kemitza. So Rav Papa said, pshitali, it's obvious to me, meloi kumtzai, the way the kaimetz has to be done is kide kamtzi inchi. The way people usually do a kaimetz. So if you look in Rashi, so Rashi says you go in from the sideways. Tzidai shalaz beisolamati. You go in sideways, and then you get in and you close your hands over your palm. That's the way it's supposed to be done. But now the question is, Boy Rav Papa, kamatz beroshe etzba'osav mahu. What if it was done from the top going down. He took the tip of his fingers, and he's not going sideways, but he's coming from the top down, and that's how he's bringing it into his palm. What's going to be the halacha then? That's not the way people usually, it's not the convenient way to pick something up. If you want to pick something up, you usually come sideways. So what's if he comes from the top down? What's going to be the halacha then? What's if you're going from the bottom up? The person's sticking his hands into the bottom, and he's picking it up and closing his hands. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha then? Minatzdodem mahu. What if it comes in from the sides? What this means is he basically puts his hand down on the mincha, and he like pressures his hand down, and by pressuring his hand down, it sort of gets filled up automatically from the side, and then he closes his hand. What's going to be the halacha if it's done in that way? All of these ways are not the regular way that people usually do. So teiku doesn't answer any of these questions. Similar, the Gemara asks regarding the chafina. Amar Rav Papa, pshitali, it's obvious to me, meloi chafnav means k'de chafni inchi. The way it's usually done, a person sticks in his hands, comes in from the sides, and he sticks in his hands, and he has the handfuls. That's the way it's supposed to be done. But now the question is, Bayir Rav Papa, chafan berashi etzbaisav. The person comes in with the tip of his fingers, and he brings it in from the tip of his fingers. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha then? So he's like coming actually from the top with the tip of his fingers. Or mamatala ma'ila, he goes again from below, not from the side, but he comes from below up. That's also not the usual way. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha? Or again, minatzad mahu. If a person is pressuring his hands down onto the keteiras and he allows it to fill up through pressuring his hands down, what's going to be the halacha? Or here there's another example. Chafan bezu ubezu v'karvan zu etzelzu. He goes in with one hand, and then with another hand, and then he brings them together. The karvan zu etzelzu. Not that he came together and brought them in together, but one hand and then another hand, and then he brings them together. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha then? Teiku. All these kinds of chafina that are not the usual way, the Gemara doesn't resolve if it's accepted or not.